Hi, this video is helping you achieve marks for English Language Paper 2, Question 1. But first, a quick note on the total number of marks for the paper. There's 80 marks for the paper, and in order to get a 9 last year, you could still miss 21 of those marks and achieve a 9. So it's important to consider we're going for the best that we can do, not perfection, because almost nobody in the country got full marks on this paper, and you don't have to get the top score. In fact, if you're just looking to pass, the number of marks you have to get on this paper is 35. This is why question 1 does get quite important, because it's worth 4 of those marks. And if you can learn to read the statements carefully and get all 4 marks on these, it could mean the difference between your 3 and your 4. So question 1 is a comprehension question. There's 4 different bubbles that you need to fill in. It's each worth 1 mark, so there's 4 marks total for this question. You need to read the statements carefully. And I recommend you use past papers to help check your work. So I'm going to show you what I mean. First, however, it's important to consider that the paper gives you a recommendation to read the text first. I completely and totally disagree with that, by the way. You only read what it asks you to read for the question, because otherwise you're wasting time. You'll forget what you've read, you'll get overwhelmed maybe, and it's just not going to start well. Okay, so here's an example past paper from November. I think this one is November 2021. And you should be familiar with the front of these papers now. You know that there's 5 questions, the same for paper 1 and paper 2. It's an hour and 45 minutes. And this is question 1. Okay? Read again. So here it says again, but I recommend you haven't read it at all yet. So the first time you're accessing this is to read this question. Read the first part of source A from lines 1 to 10. Choose 4 statements below which are true. Shade the circles in the box of the ones that you think are true. Now this is important as well, because people will shade in the box and then change their minds. And it gives you clear instructions for how to fix that. Prepare yourself for this, because you probably will make a mistake and want to change it. That's fine. If you make an error, cross out the whole box. If you change your mind and require a statement that has been crossed out, then draw a circle around the entire thing. Okay? So first, source A from lines 1 to 10. So here's where you go to your insert. You've got your inserts here. You're going to have 2. You can see the first one is a newer text. It will always be the newer text. The second one is an older text. It will always be older. So there are certain expectations you can consider from that. You always want to look at the box at the top, because that's going to give you the summary of what the text is about. So even if you don't understand some things in the text, you look at the box and it helps you. So for question 1, it has said you want to look at lines 1 to 10. So I recommend you draw a box, or at least a partial box around it. So you know, and you haven't even read it yet, but you know that you're only going to be looking for that to answer the question. Let's go back and read the statements, and then we'll read the extract. So you're going to see 8 statements, and 4 of them are correct. The cinema program was every Saturday morning. The cinema program was short. The children all came from the same street. The children formed a large group as they moved through the streets. The Odeon was in Rockdale. The children wore shoes. The children went to the cinema on foot. The children had really tough feet. Okay. This extract is from Clive James' autobiography, published in 1980. Here, he writes about going to the cinema as a child in Australia in the 1940s. Every Saturday afternoon at the Pictures was a feature film, 16 cartoons and an episode each from 4 different serials. The program just went on and on and on. The Margaret Street children would join up with the Earline Street children, and the combined mass would add themselves to the Sunbeam Avenue children, and they would join the swarm of children from all the other areas, all moving north along Rocky Point Road towards Rockdale, where the Odeon stood. In summer, the concrete footpaths were hot. The tarmac footpaths were even hotter. Bubbles of tar formed to be squashed flat by our leathery bare feet. Running around on gravel playgrounds throughout the spring, by summer we had feet that could tread on a drawing pin and hardly feel it. Okay, the cinema program was every Saturday morning. I would go and double check that, but I think that is correct. Cinema program is short. All the children came from the same street. They formed a large group as they moved through the streets. The Odeon, the children went on foot. The children had tough feet. So there's one other one that I'm not sure about that I need to check. Okay, so I reread it's every Saturday afternoon. That one said Saturday morning, so that's wrong. There was a feature film. The program went on and on and on, so the program is not short. The Margaret Street children would join up with the Earline Street children, so it's not children all from the same road. They would add themselves with the Sunbeam children from all other areas, moving along towards Rocky Point Road, towards Rockdale, where the Odeon stood. Now, I think there was something about Rockdale. The Odeon was in Rockdale. There it is. There's the last one that I wasn't sure about. Now, let's say that I put this and then realize, oh, that's totally wrong. So I go like that. Okay? Or let's say I decided this was wrong, then I went back and was like, oh, actually it's right. So you do that. And that's how you get your marks. So this is what I recommend that you do to test yourself on this. Go to the other past papers that are on AQA's website, and I've shown you how to access that. Open the question paper, the inserts, and the mark scheme, because the mark scheme gives you the correct answers for these and gives you a good understanding of how to earn the most marks for the other questions.